Guys, just a little something different today with our engine. So what we're going to try to do is spray out some high temperature Cerakote on our alternator impeller. And the reason we're going to do that is because we have to restore this one. Originally I had painted this a few years back. We did a video on a dress-up kit for the engine. Basically what happened over time, we had a little bit of a shrink back issue. You can see the imperfections there that's been filled in since then. So what I did was put a base coat down and a clear coat on top of that. But over time the shrink back just was so severe, I just wasn't happy with it. And the pitting really needed to be addressed. So I took this to our good friend Kurt Donahue and got his opinion on it as to what I should do, and also how to deal with the rivets and re-riveting this back on. Thought maybe he would have some ideas. So after he took a good look at it, he basically recommended that I really should just replace it, because what happens is when you pull this hub off of here, you really have an issue of rebalancing once you put it back on, once you've worked with it. So really, in a perfect world, you really shouldn't pull that off of there. You just try and work with it and keep it, although for me, that would just drive me crazy. I'm going to have to take it apart. But anyhow, I did take him up on his suggestion, and I did buy a new replacement from Porsche. Unfortunately, we can't use it. So long story short, what's happening here is on the early cars, and I'm not sure where the year exchange was from 245 millimeter to 250 millimeter, but they did make an impeller change, and they didn't change the part number for these early impellers. So if you buy an early impeller, it's going to come 245 millimeters, or to fit a 245 millimeter housing, and this one is 250, so it's not going to work. It's not going to properly pull air and cool your engine, so you can't use it. I'm going to put a picture in here of what that one looked like as we receive it, just so you have some kind of idea front and back what you'd be getting into if you replace it. But if you do have a 250 millimeter housing, you won't be able to use that. You're going to have to just make your original work. I did notice when we got the one in from Porsche, it was slightly heavier than this one all put together. Felt a lot heavier, and just didn't feel quite as precise as the original here. So what I've decided to do is just power through it anyways. We're going to restore this one because we have no choice. I wasn't happy with the base coat clear coat, so that's where our Cerakote comes in. Kurt also turned me on to this when I was back at his shop doing transmission work. He had a couple carburetor bodies in there with some Cerakote on there, and it just looked awesome. So I definitely had to get into some of that. And you can see I've got some sprayed out here on our manifolds, and I picked this color titanium because to me that's a real convincing color for a slightly aged magnesium. I think it'd be a good contrast for our impeller in our aluminum housing here, and very believable in a magnesium scent. So by spraying out our manifolds, I used this C105 series, and it was tough. It very temperamental. Didn't go well. Had to strip it back off, respray it. So there's going to be some issues with that. I did call Cerakote and talk to the representative, and he said for what I'm doing here for this old work that has pitting and imperfection in it, to try this Glacier series. I should be much happier with it, and it should be a heavier bodied type paint for filling things in. So hopefully that's going to work. Let's flip this over and take a look at the back side. Okay, so I've already sprayed out the back side, masked everything off, and shot our C105, and I could see by just doing that we're going to run into some problems if we try to shoot the front, and I definitely don't want to strip this down and re-go again, so that's why we're going to try this Glacier series. So here's what happens. You can see a little bit of solvent pop down in there. So what's going on, or the way it was explained to me, as this is coming out of the gun, they use some proprietary type carriers with their paint, and this particular C105. It dries very quick coming out of the gun. So as your first coat goes down, by the time you get to your second coat, it may already be dry. So when your second coat going down on top, you're going to end up with a little bit of solvent pop if you're not moving quickly and wet enough through your piece. So that's why I'm switching up on the front side. All this pitting here, I have taken care of that by brushing out some POR 15, sanding it down, and then I've prepared the surface with the recommended 100 grit garnet sand, which gives it a nice aggressive bite. So what we're going to do, we're going to mask off this inside here. We're going to take it out in the spray booth and try and get around this piece. It's a very difficult piece to spray, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes, how I'll get around it, and see what the finished result is going to turn out. And then looking at the technical part as to why Kurt recommended we get a new one to replace this one to begin with. So here's the impeller hub, and you can see the little notch right down there is a wear pattern from the outer fan belt enclosure to lock that in there. So that's moving around, and that's basically no good. So we won't be able to use that. And his concern was if we go ahead and try and rebuild this and put something new on there, as it's not going to balance. And that could be the case, but at this point we really don't have much choice. We're going to have to just power through it and make it work. Okay guys, so we're in the booth here ready to go. Actually looks like something out of a horror movie here, but what that actually is our exhaust system covered up because we don't want to get any overspray on them, and this really is the safest place to keep them, so that's why I got them out here. It's not really what you think. And here's our staging area. So let's just look at everything it's going to take to spray this out, because this Cerakote is something that's not really a conventional coating, so you really got to be prepared for it. Do your homework. Here is the data sheets. Take a look at those. You can pause and get the information you want off of that. And this is for our Glacier series. This is the paint we're going to be shooting, the C7900, and we're going to strain that with a 100 mesh strainer. This is the gun we're using, and this is the preferred gun that they sell at Cerakote to spray this. And I've used this a few times, and it is really a nice gun. Very, very nice quality, and lots of adjustment. Definitely going to need protection, as this stuff's really smelly. I got a jar of acetone. I have a spray bottle of acetones. That really helps to clean up the spray gun better. Paper towels, and then our staging. Let's look at this guy. So this impeller, this is not going to be an easy thing to coat and coat where we can be happy with it. So what we really want is we want everything wet on the insides, the backside edge, these guys right here. We flip this over, you can see lots of areas we got to get in there with a spray gun. So when we're spraying in these areas here, we're going to get bounce back, we're going to get shadowing. We need to come in directly. We got to be careful not to get any runs on it. Very, very difficult piece to spray out. And from a little bit of experience spraying out the Cerakote, we need to move quickly. So, the quicker we can get our coat on there, the better this is going to go. So looking at my funny prop setup here, the whole thinking behind this is a press fit glue bottle in there that I can rotate. So what we're going to be able to do with something like this is we're going to be able to spray from this side, do everything we need to do to get it coated where we're happy with it, and then flip it over and then be able to rotate it from this side depending on which direction we want to go, how fast we want to go. And with this kind of a setup, I then don't have to touch anything, so I'm only handling the glue bottle. Very important to work out all your staging before you pull a trigger. Okay, well that went much smoother than our last spray out with our C105. Booth temperature in here is 75 degrees. We're looking at this 30 minutes after our spray out and we're still wet, so I'm feeling really confident we're not going to have any issues with this material coating whatsoever. A lot more solids to it and a lot more forgiving to work with and a lot more build to it. And so this is all the material that we used to spray that out. And real convincing magnesium color. I just love this color. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to let this set up for a couple of days and then have a look at it and see how it cured out. Okay, so it's been 2 days since our spray out. Let's take a look at this thing up close and see what we got. I got to tell you, I'm so happy I could just scream. This Cerakote, what an amazing coating. And if you can get through all the technical issues of it, boy, you're in for a real treat. Look at this. Get some zoom on that. Look at the finish on that thing. Just an absolutely beautiful finish. So I did reach out to the tech department while this was curing up. I spoke with Austin and asked him, you know, what is really the big difference between the C105 titanium and the C7900, which is what we shot today. Basically, the viscosity and thickness of the Glacier series is going to make this coating here a more thermal heat insulating type property for whatever we're coating. So you're going to get more thermal protection with that. The C105 over here, which we shot, which I was having some issues with, it still turned out beautiful, but a little bit more temperamental. So this is basically, it's a high temperature heat coating, but it doesn't have the thermal insulating properties that this one would have here. And on a scratch test, the C105 a little bit harder than our Glacier series, but for what we're using, this is going to work out just beautiful. So we want to thank Austin for helping us out with that. And then one other detail I should bring up regarding the color titanium. So you can see basically two different shades. Even though they call this titanium on both series, it is a different shade depending on which one you're using. And for what we're doing, this is fine. I'm happy with both colors, and I'm really happy with this one here because this really is this is just up front and center stage. When you open the engine compartment of a Porsche, this is really the first thing that's staring you down, so I want to get that as right as we can. Also, I've got a new replacement center hub. This is aftermarket. I got this from Aussie Sales. It comes with rivets, and I've got a new top piece for that. This one's from Porsche, so when those came in, the coloration was worlds apart on those, so I stripped the finishes off and refinished, so we have something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to look at there. And then I want to put out a question for you guys out there. Maybe somebody out there could help us out. So I need to rivet this center hub down, and I've done a lot of research on the tooling needed to press them in and do a round over type finish on the back side. I found some tooling, but I'm not quite sure that's exactly what we want to use. It's some kind of a rivet press. But if anybody out there knows the correct tooling that we could use, I sure would like to get my hands on some and see if we can't work that out. Perhaps we can make a video on that down the road, because putting this thing in the mail and sending it off to somebody at this point is completely out of the question. Okay guys, there you go. There's some Cerakote, a little bit closer to our finish line on our engine. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.